Welcome to another episode of Immigration and Mobility Decoded, a podcast about business immigration and global mobility. I am Eric, and as always, joining me is Finn. Finn, how are things going? It's the end of July as we're recording this. We have a great episode. In a few moments, everyone will hear our combo with Josh Hyatt. But Finn, I was off all of last week, so what's the latest?
It's been relatively slow in the immigration news front, which I can't say is a bad thing. As many of our listeners might know, Washington D.C. essentially shuts down in the summer. They're on the European schedule, which is nice for them.
Yeah,
But don't tend to get too many updates from the fine folks down in D.C. on the immigration front this time of year.
yeah.
Uh, but our neighbors to the north did take some action that I know we'll talk about briefly here. So, how was your week off, though, Eric? Did you do anything enjoyable?
It was pretty enjoyable. It was pretty relaxing. I stayed in the city of Chicago, so it was pretty nice. Definitely one of the highlights is I participated 50% of the Barbenheimer phenomenon. So I saw Oppenheimer last week. Very excellent movie. I have yet to see Barbie. I think I'm gonna wait just a little bit until there's a little bit more room in the theaters. But did you see any of those movies over the last couple days?
Not yet, but I'm super familiar with the book that Christopher Nolan based
Yes.
the Oppenheimer movie off of. I
Did you
read
read
that.
it?
I read it in college. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I think in college, maybe after. But yeah, no, Oppenheimer's a super interesting character, and Cillian Murphy's one of my favorite actors. So I remember a couple of years ago when I heard about that, that Nolan was putting that movie together. I was super excited. But
Yeah.
I'm much more of a wait until like the movies come out, 2 months after the movies come out, and
Yeah.
see it when the theaters are completely empty. So that's gonna be my strategy.
Just don't tell a bunch of super cinema fans that you're watching it on a different screen and not the 35 millimeter IMAX, the way it's meant to be watched, I guess, as they would say.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth on that. I mean, the last IMAX movie I saw was Dunkirk,
Mm,
and that was actually worth seeing in IMAX because
yeah.
that movie was incredible.
Yeah.
So this could be a similar one, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I like watching movies on my couch at home. You
Yeah,
got
no, I mean it's so comfy. Well, I mean, you might have to pick out a couple movies because you'll be off next in the near future. You're doing a cross country road trip, and you just got this awesome camper we were talking about before we were recording. So I feel like that might be a perfect spot and perfect time when late at night, and just watch a movie on your laptop or something.
Yeah, late at night probably won't be part of my life on that cross country road trip. I'm very much a get up, well before the crack of dawn.
Okay,
When you're driving, get three,
yeah,
4 hours under your belt before the sun comes up, and then get some breakfast and hit the road and be done with the day by 2 p.m. So that's usually my strategy every time I do these long cross
nice.
country road trips. But
And for those who are listening, so you're based on the East Coast in Maine, so you're doing Maine all the way to Cali. Is that right?
yep, all the way to California. Yeah, zigzagging around a little bit, going to a few different spots, seeing some friends around the country, especially out west. So it'll be nice. I always love going cross country and getting to see all the different states. Stopping in
Yeah.
at diners is usually my go to. Again, part two of that schedule is get up really early, get a few hours on the road, stop at the local diner, and grab a steak and eggs and a coffee and chat up the local waitress. Usually about sports.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a great time. I ended up spending quite a few too many hours about 5 6 years ago when I drove cross country in South Bend, Indiana.
Oh,
Uh,
no
debate,
way.
yeah, debating Notre Dame football with a couple of locals there. So
Oh man, that's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, we're the last couple of years we've done a weekend in South Bend for the at the start of the football season, and so we're doing that again this upcoming September. I think we're going to Notre Dame versus Cal. I think if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, no, it's all the sports are heating up. I'm sure training camp is right around the corner. Your Patriots are gearing up. I've actually have not been keeping up with any training camp news or over the summer. So it should be just an interesting upcoming NFL season, which I'm sure we'll talk about plenty.
yeah, I'm sure we will. I will say that that sport we've talked about it with a few of our guests in the past, but
Yeah.
sports is kind of the lingua franca of the world,
Yeah,
especially on a podcast centered around immigration. It feels like you're always able to talk with anyone about sports. So
yeah, totally. Well, as much, let's not keep the people waiting, Finn. Before we hop into our convo with Josh Hyatt, who is part of Odyssey Relocation, we had a great conversation with him. Talked, a lot about just the state of the global mobility industry. He shared his thoughts on a couple other things happening. Last year you worked with him on a research paper about sustainability in mobility, so he hit on that. And then towards the end, we had a really fun time talking about just technology and the rapid evolution and its impact on mobility, and particularly things like AI and Chat GPT. So that'll be coming up in a few moments. But Finn, just really wanted to quickly get your thoughts, any updates on the recent news. You mentioned Canada. They launched that program. Gosh, has already been like a little over a month ago. Their work permit program for tech workers, and I guess that the program recently opened up, and they filled 10,000 slots in one day. And you spoke to Envoy's Canadian immigration experts. What updates can you share regarding this recent news?
yeah, I mean the program was a resounding success. So I believe we're filming this at the end of July, or shooting this at the end of July here. In mid July on a Sunday, the Canadian government opened up the portal for folks to apply for this sort of H-1B adjacent visa in Canada. Right, to qualify, you have to have an H-1B in the U.S. And then you can go and seek work authorization or work permit in Canada. So they opened up the portal on Sunday, and in under 48 hours, they met the cap of 10,000 applications.
Oh
So
man.
I talked with Envoys Jim Yang and Daphne Wong about that. We'll release that conversation in a separate video. They kind of talk through, what the program, what the details of the program are, what applicants can expect going forward in terms of processing times and the permissions that are granted under that work permit, what it could mean for U.S. employers in the future, how they might be able to fold that into their global mobility program, and just how Canada may expand this very successful pilot program, right? That where the sole strategy is essentially poaching uh, H-1B workers from the U.S. who are stuck in the green card backlog. That's really who they're targeting here, right? As we talk about regularly on the
Hmm.
podcast, especially Indian and Chinese nationals are stuck in sometimes decade-long green card backlogs trying to get permanent residence here, despite their qualifications for a high-skilled visa like the H-1B. So really interesting conversation with Jim and Daphne. We'll add that when we release that video later in the week, we'll add the link in the comments below so folks can go over and check that out.
Totally. Awesome. Appreciate the update, Finn. Awesome. I think with that, we'll hop to our conversation with Josh Hyatt from Odyssey Relocation. And now I'd like to welcome Josh Hyatt, the VP of Sales and Marketing at Odyssey Relocation, to Immigration and Mobility Decoded. Josh, thank you so much for hopping on the show today. Finn and I are so excited to talk to you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Finn. It's pretty fun to be here. I think this is my first official podcast. I've done some stuff for video and TV before, but I don't think I've actually done a podcast before. So this is fun.
Hey, first time for everything. We'll have to dive into more of that video or the TV experience in just a moment. But yeah, Josh, I mean, we're recording this just after the 4th of July holiday. Sure, we all had a lot of fun, but yeah, how was your holiday?
Fourth was cool. I've got a really unique place I live in Orange County where we're able to see actually five fireworks shows from my deck on my house. So we have a big group over. Everybody comes and watch the fireworks. We barbecue, and the June gloom finally went away. So we were pretty excited.
All right, that's clutch. Yeah, as long as that June gloom goes away. And in addition to the 4th, you actually just got back from a pretty big trip overseas in Japan. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that trip?
Yeah, I love to travel. My wife and I have a huge passion for it, like lots of people do. And Japan has been on the list for a while. We actually booked it in 2019, right before
Hmm.
2020. course, that didn't work out real well with COVID. So we finally were able to rebook it recently and get ourselves there. Japan's an absolutely incredible country. Beautiful, safe, easy to get around, friendly to tourists and people that are coming. And I mean, so many cool experiences that we had there. We, went to Kyoto. We took the bullet train that is, going 200 miles an hour and just gliding on air, it feels like. And,
Yeah.
Kyoto is just an absolutely beautiful historic city. You've got the bamboo forest there. You've got the San Jusogwendo Temple, which I'm sure I butchered, which is kind of like seeing the terracotta warriors in China. There's like thousands of statues of of Buddha there that are amazing. And then the Fushima Inari Shrine, which is really famous. It's got all the red posts. You see a lot of people that take their Instagram photos with these kind of all these like red posts that go on and on and on for days. It's really cool. And then when we got to Tokyo, we did a bunch of fun things. We did a ramen cooking class. So we spent four
Fun.
hours trying to figure out how to make the world's best ramen, which was really cool. And took in a baseball game. We did Mario Kart through the manga district. So we actually drove on the streets of Tokyo in little like go-karts, uh, and then made food, right? So just everywhere in Japan is incredible food: sushi, tempura, yakitori, yakiniku, udon, soba, tonkatsu. You name it, I
Mm.
tried it and ate it. So we had a good time. So that's a lot about Japan, but just a beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some photos and just heard a lot of great stories, and it's definitely high on my bucket list of international trips that I want to go to because there's just so much of our here in the states too, like so much of our culture is influenced by Japan, Japanese culture, then just the whole urbanization of like particularly Tokyo. Like, I don't want to say like I have this weird fascination, but I do tend to go down some like YouTube rabbit holes of like city designs and urban and whatnot. And like Tokyo is definitely up there, given its like
You,
proximity there. Like you're able to walk everywhere. You got the bullet train, as you mentioned, just the regular public transportation and biking and everything.
first of all, you can't even understand the scale of Tokyo until you get there. So, Finn mentioned that you used to be from San Fernando Valley, right, in LA. And so if you took all of LA, which is like this huge sprawling metropolis that, spans, 60 or 70 miles, all of that's just urban. Whereas in LA, there's kind of all kinds of different little areas and neighborhoods. It's all just kind of urban high rise. And so, if you're going out for the day in Japan and you might go 30 or 40 minutes in one direction, you're still in like urban Tokyo. And, you have to really plan your days around where you're going because it's so far to get anywhere because it's so big. But it's also really easy. So, but it's a
Yeah,
blast. Yeah,
nice, nice.
Josh, you mentioned ramen. Japanese cuisine is definitely, I think, one of the top tier cuisines in all the world. Did you have the chance
for
to try
sure.
any natto, those fermented soybeans, while you were there?
I've had some natto before. I don't think we had any on this trip, but I have had it on other trips or other kind of culinary adventures I've had. No natto. I think we did a kaiseki dinner in Kyoto. Kaiseki dinner is like a 10-course meal, traditional Japanese meal, and you're going to get some interesting things when you do a 10-course meal like that. So we had a few items that we either A, couldn't identify, or B, not sure it hit our palates perfectly, but the rest of the majority of stuff we had was incredibly delicious, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. If anyone going to say something, nice.
No.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Do you happen to like keep like a travel journal? Like, do you document your trips? Because in addition, you're pretty well, like you travel a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we do a couple. My wife's a teacher, so she has big gaps of time off, and so we tend to travel when she has time off. I don't keep a journal. I'm not a big Facebook poster normally, but the one time I typically post on Facebook is when I travel, so that I can at least have a little archive of all the stuff I did while we were on vacation. So, in case my computer hard drive melts down, I have a record of all the pictures somewhere in the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't really write it, but I've got a pretty good memory for this stuff. you have these sort of like highlight experiences during a trip that no doubt stand out. So, whether it's Mario Kart through the city, there's a thing there called Team Lab Planets where it's like this video art installation that's like incredible. But those things you just never forget. You're just not
Yeah.
gonna forget those things. So
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. But Josh, in addition to traveling, you are also a big music fest junkie, is I guess
yeah,
is appropriate term. I am not on the same level as you because we've talked about this in the past. But actually, behind me is one of my favorite music fests that I went to, Pitchfork, back in 2016. But yeah, I mean, summer music fest season is in full swing. Have you been to any fests so far this year, or any plans for the rest of the summer slash fall?
yeah, we've done a couple already this year. So we did one in spring called Innings Festival. That's in Arizona. So it goes along with spring training. So you can go out and watch a little baseball, watch some bands, some cool bands there, like Green Day, Weezer, Eddie Vedder, Mumford, Marcus Mumford, Black Crowes. So a lot of good bands at that one. The one that we go to every year, that's our big one, is Bottle Rock. So we've been doing that for the last 6 or 7 years. This year was incredible. So Post Malone, Smashing Pumpkins, Steel, Lizzo, Duran Duran, Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Struts, Little Nas X, Wu Tang. So it's all over the place as far as the kind of music you might hear at a festival. But that one's neat because you're up in Napa. All the wineries are serving wine there. All the famous chefs of Napa are serving food. So this is a little more like, for lack of a better word, bougie music festival. So it's very low key as far as the audience. Of maybe skews a tiny bit older, but is super fun and super beautiful to be up in Napa usually. And
Yeah.
then I got two more coming up. Ohana Fest, which is right in my backyard in Orange County. It's on the beach. It's Eddie Vedder's festival. Foo Fighters and Killers and Pretenders are playing this year. And then we're doing a crazy 80s one called Darker Waves Fest in Huntington
Hmm.
Beach, which has got a lot of like 80s new wave kind of bands, New Order, Tears for Fears, Violent Femmes, Echo and the Bunnymen, stuff like that. So,
Nice, nice.
so
That's
we're all
awesome.
over the place with our musical taste, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there's not one genre that I stick with.
Yeah.
Uh, I can go from rap and rock to folk and bluegrass, and that's what's I think so cool about doing music festivals. How about you guys? Do you guys like you end up getting stuck in one genre, or do you like lots of different kinds of music, or you know
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I just like the experience of going to fest and just being exposed to so many different artists and bands. Um, I would say the ones that I do most often are Pitchfork. I'm actually going to be doing Pitchfork for the first time since pre-COVID. So I skipped 2021 and then 2022. So very much looking forward to that. I mean, Pitchfork, as I'm sure you know, it's a lot more indie rock, and maybe you get some like R&B, some rap in there, but definitely skews more indie or up and coming artists. Although oddly and funny enough, Bon Iver is going to be playing on the Sunday night, so that should be a pretty big crowd. Um,
nicely
haven't been
pronounced,
doing
Eric, by the way. Nicely
yeah.
pronounced.
I mean, yeah, exactly. You can't mispronounce it. And then yeah, I mean, Lollapalooza is always a big one. I haven't been doing it in a couple years. I mean, the crowd definitely skews a bit younger, so the artists are going to be maybe a little bit more reflective of that. I mean, just when I was earlier taking a look at that lineup, I mean, I recognize a handful here and there, but definitely in that particular set list, it's starting to feel like I'm outgrowing some of the performances. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, it's definitely should be pretty fun. I haven't been to an out of state one in a while. I did go to one in DC once that like the Strokes and Drake headlined respectively. Well, one of the nights. Um, yeah, Pitchfork, Lala. Went to one down in St. Louis called Lou Fest. That was pretty fun a couple years ago. I had LCD Sound System one night, and then Mumford and Sons another night. Oh, and then I'm forgetting her name, but she's Lauren Hill. All right, yeah, Lauren Hill. She was also supposed to play, yeah, but she came out like so late, and so I think she only got to play like 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever.
I think
But
she's kind of notorious for that, right? Like,
yeah,
she gets like
exactly.
stage fright. All right, so I got a
Yeah.
question for you guys. I got a question for you guys. So I'm a couple years older than you guys. So I was thinking about this before the call. So what's like classic rock to you guys, or classic, like older music to you guys? Like, what era defines that for you? So like, probably for me when I was growing up, it was like 70s stuff. Like, has that shifted for you guys, or is it still is that still classic rock to you guys, or
I mean, I listen to Miles Davis and Ella Fitzgerald all the time, so
Okay,
that's
so you're
old.
going all the way back. You're going,
But I would say
50s.
classic rock is the Stones. It's the '60s.
All right, so you're still going
Yeah,
60s. All right,
yeah,
cool.
I would say yeah, it's like the Stones, Jimi Hendrix,
All right,
um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you. I guess the Beatles
all
ish.
right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess they would. I guess they would fall under rock. Yeah, I would say like 60s, 70s. I wouldn't say 80s. I feel like the 80s are in music history like its own unique subset. Like
Yeah,
plus it's not that far, I guess. I don't know. I feel like 80s rock is way different than like classic rock, 60s and 70s.
It's 50
for
years
sure.
ago, the '80s. Think about
I
that.
know. It's crazy.
Wow.
Century.
It's crazy to think about. My theory is this: good music is always good music. Doesn't matter
Yep.
what era or what generation you're from. I always say you end up liking your parents' music and even your parents' parents' music, because good music just, like you said, Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis, whatever, that stuff always will be good because it's
Yep.
just good, and that's it. So
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's before we hop into, the state of relo and mobility this year, final thought, one of my final thoughts on Music Fest. So actually over the long weekend, there's a documentary on Netflix about Woodstock 99. So obviously Woodstock, was in, 69, the original one, then there was one in 94, and then the final version of it was 99, and that one was just I can't appropriately describe it on here without like swearing, but it was just a mess, as I'm sure you know, of a
That,
music
that was the
festival.
that was the one with the mud people, right? Where it was just raining and horrible, and there was no
It
water, and right.
well, yeah, except the mud that they were sliding in was mixed with
Mm,
other
mm,
things from bodies.
yes,
Um
enough
and
said.
to your point about good music, the some of the bands that performed at Woodstock 99, I mean they did have Jim Brown, but then they also had like Insane Clown Posse, Limp Bizkit, Red Hot Chili Peppers stood still great to this day. But just seeing some of these artists, and then you're like, I guess like they were reflective of the time, but I don't know if I would go out of my way to like still listen to them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it goes back to what I was saying, right? I mean, there's some stuff that just doesn't always cross generations, right? So,
Hmm.
maybe Limp Bizkit doesn't like appeal to people today as much, but I would say great music's great music, like I said earlier. So I was thinking earlier about something I did earlier this year. We went to a Billy Joel concert in New York City. I think it was actually last year. And it was his first concert back from COVID, and he does that thing at Madison Square Garden where he plays kind of his hometown. Billy's in his 70s, like mid 70s or something.
Yeah.
And you go to a show like that, and you've got people from 12-year-old to 90 years old singing every word of every song, right? And it's incredible. So I always say music brings people together, and that's why I love exploring new music so much, is because, you know, I always say sometimes I get friends, I go to these music festivals and they go like, well, I don't like these bands, or I don't know these bands. Like, why would I go to this music festival? It's like, hey, go explore new music, new styles. You might find an unknown band or somebody that you never heard before that might turn into your favorite. And you can explore a bunch of different genres. So it's cool.
Yeah, totally. We probably went to the same tour then for Billy Joel because we saw Billy Joel last summer at Notre. He played at Notre Dame Stadium. My wife went to Notre Dame for college, so we made the drive over to South Bend, and no, it was an amazing show. And then next month we're seeing Bruce Springsteen at Wrigley Field, so very much looking forward to that.
That's another epic one that everyone comes together for, right?
Yep, yep.
Cool.
Well, Josh, definitely want to talk music all day, but I got to transition here begrudgingly into talking shop a little bit. This is Immigration and Mobility Decoded, so we got to
Let's do
talk
it.
a little bit about one of those two. We know you've been in the relocation industry for quite a while, in various roles. You're at Odyssey now. Um, we're about halfway through 2023, and we want to pick your brain and get a sense of where you think the relocation and mobility industry is at this point. Maybe if you could give us a quick summary of what changes have happened over the past couple of years or decades. What sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with kind of what's going on today, maybe, and I can maybe take the lens backwards a little bit. But I think we've gone from a space where for the last probably 8 to 10 years we were humming along, right? Everything was good for most of business. Economy was good. Everybody was feeling well. And obviously, the last since the pandemic and since some of the changes that have happened with remote work and work from home, it's been challenging. So we have a lot of forces right now that are working against our industry, right? So mass layoffs. We've got hiring freezes that are happening. We've got high interest rates. We've got reluctance from homeowners to sell because of high interest rates, their properties. We got low inventory if you're trying to buy a home, and real estate prices are probably falling, right? So all of that is creating a really challenging atmosphere for our industry. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody or any of our listeners who are tuning in. But and then the last thing I think I keep seeing is there's still global disruptions that are also limiting our number of international moves. So what's going on in the Ukraine? What's going on now? We're starting to hear that the State Department just put out restrictions on travel to China because of some of the challenges there. So we're in a tough spot. I mean, it's been a challenge. I'd say right now we're hopeful. We're starting to see some signs of things improving, and we could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the economic factors I think are interesting. I mean, you mentioned mass layoffs and increases in certain sectors, but I think I was reading earlier today that the U.S. is expected, or last month added close to 500,000 jobs in different industries. Kind of packaging all those economic factors together. Obviously, some of them are ambiguous. What regions, what areas are you seeing that are having brain drain, and what areas are you seeing that are having brain gain or having population increases in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, uh, the tech sector's obviously been highly affected by everything going on in the last 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and so you've seen, I think, 160,000 plus tech workers that were laid off, uh, and an additional 164,000 that lost their jobs last year. So in the last 6 months, you're talking about over 300,000 people losing their jobs in the tech sector. Other industries haven't been affected as much. We have clients in our industry, that we work with in mining and financial services and other areas that are doing great, right? So tech seems like the biggest loser so far, but you just said, Vin, right? The last jobs report said that things are going well, right? So I still think there is a war for talent out there, and I still think companies are still trying to get good people that have skills. And there's certainly in certain sectors in tech, there's if you are a AI programmer or a engineer, you're still highly desirable and someone who's wanted out there, and you're probably going to find a job.
We were just reading over the white paper that you contributed to last year in conjunction with Envoy, and you wrote about sustainability in mobility. Can you talk a little bit more about your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, sure. Uh, thanks for bringing that up. It was fun to do that with you guys, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing, I write a lot of RFPs for our company, and have been involved in writing RFPs since I got in the industry 20 years ago. So I think I've written somewhere around 850 RFPs, but not until the last 6 months to a year have I started seeing a real focus on ESG and sustainability. So what we're starting to see is companies are really starting to focus on how their company impacts the environment and their employees' well-being and diversity, equity, inclusion, and sustainability is obviously a huge part of that. So we've got, again, I mentioned earlier, we've got some mining clients, and they want to make sure from a organizational aspect that they have a sustainable future for themselves and as they work on sort of mining natural resources. So they're trying to figure out ways to reduce their carbon footprint and at least be carbon neutral or better, most of them. And so, when we look out at the marketplace, we hear that employees themselves are more focused on, hey, how is my company affecting the environment, right? And people want to work for purpose-driven companies, right? They don't want to just feel like they're a cog in the wheel. They want to know that their company's having some sort of social impact. So, according to some reports I read, 75% of people want to work for an organization that makes a positive contribution to society. And so that's one reason we're starting to see this pop up everywhere in these RFPs is that if they can get these ESGs policies in place, it's going to benefit the business, their stakeholders, their employees, and the community in which they're operating.
So on that note, like, what do some of these ESG policies look like? I imagine it's reducing travel unless otherwise needed. But are you seeing new things pop up, or can you just give us a sense of what are in these policies?
Yeah, we're seeing sort of a wide range of impact. So you've got policies, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, that are being affected by ESG, and then that's bubbling down to us and our partners at the RMCs, right? So they're asking us to take action throughout our supply chain. And so from a policy perspective, you're seeing things like the inclusion of discard and donate. So if you move less stuff during a relocation, it's going to reduce your carbon footprint overall, right? So they're saying, hey, get rid of stuff, recycle stuff. We're seeing things like well-being funds. We're seeing furniture allowances in lieu of household goods moves. So, hey, instead of moving your stuff across the country or the world, just buy new stuff when you get there. It'll reduce your carbon footprint. We just see companies that are looking at what their CO2 footprint estimates are, right? So they're saying, hey, Odyssey or RMC, can you help us understand what our impact is? And so we're having to do a lot of reporting for companies now. And that's part of their policy or part of their overall program design is looking at those numbers on a regular basis and figuring out ways to reduce those carbon emission numbers. And then for our side, it's, simple things. Can we, do e-closings instead of using paper closings, right? So just reducing use of trees. Can we use, recycled moving supplies? Can we use fuel efficient vehicles, induction lighting, any kind of that type of stuff becomes just all stuff that you can track. And so now we're being asked as an organization to just track and report that on a regular basis.
Got it, got it. What I guess, like, advice or words of wisdom do you have for companies looking to either for the first time incorporate ESG policies or maybe keep building them up?
I would say the biggest thing is, first of all, it's a partnership, right? So you need to work with your clients and to understand what they need as an organization from both a reporting perspective and what their expectations are for you as an organization from a admissions or overall sustainability requirements. So not everybody's the same. Different industries have different sensitivities to it. Some, again, I'll use the mining clients, they're very sensitive to it, right? So they want to really focus on it. Maybe a particular tech company, it's a focus, but not as big an initiative for them. Maybe they don't feel like they're creating as much impact on the environment, right? So get some understanding of what they want. Get on board on making sure that you have probably someone within your organizations that's responsible for sustainability and organizational impact. and make sure you roll it out to your entire organization. I think even if your client's the one asking you to be ESG compliant or have reporting, that doesn't mean that you can't just bring all those same impacts into your own organization and get a focus on that internally.
Got it. Got it. So Josh, I know a couple minutes ago, Finn kind of laid the groundwork, and you mentioned, just the state of, the I guess the overall economy. Jobs reports are still coming out, that are seemingly better than people keep expecting. The Fed was raising interest rates, but they skipped the month of June, and they did say there'll likely be like two more, I think, for the rest of the year. So I guess I'm just curious, like at the start of the year, end of last year, we're all bracing for this recession, and as of July 6th, I think safe to say we're it hasn't happened yet. And I think I even saw that like JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs like lowered their outlook for a recession. So see, I'm just wondering how do these economic like turns and tides kind of impact mobility, and particularly this year when we're all expecting one thing, but then as the weeks go on, it's like it's not as bad as we, I guess, all envisioned.
It's confusing, Eric. It's there's no better way to put it. I think I think nobody really is confident in which direction we're heading, and that lack of confidence, I think, continues to create that uncertainty in the marketplace for corporations, right? And so and for just human beings, right? So what we're still seeing at our company is really a reluctance of employees to sell their home because of interest rates, right? So interest rates still seem to be really high. Um, some data I got from PNC Bank, and I'll give a shout out to Katie Rednick and their mortgage team over there. 62% of homeowners are in what they call the handcuff zone. And what that means is that their interest rates are so low that they feel completely unable to give up their low rate, right? And so what that creates is, and then 82% of those people are under 5% interest rates. So those people are unwilling to move or sell their home. So if they're getting offered a new job somewhere, they're saying, "Hey, I appreciate the new job, but I either have to be remote or I'm not willing to give up this kind of low interest rate I have." And then the other half of that, according to Redfin, homeowners, in order to even consider selling their home or listing their home, say that interest rates need to be at 3% or lower so they can buy a new home. So that's 78% of people are saying that. So you've got these opposing forces that are going on. People don't want to sell, people don't want to list, people don't want to buy. And so I think until we start seeing those rates coming down, we're not going to see a lot of home sale and home purchase activity. And that, at the end of the day, really affects the RMCs. So that's usually the number one revenue source for most RMCs. And without that revenue, it's really challenging in our marketplace. And the other big thing I would say is the hiring freeze and layoffs are just a huge issue still. So while we're seeing job growth across the sector, um, in certain sectors, we're just seeing still mass hiring freezes. They're not hiring new employees or only hiring critical people. And, obviously some companies are still in layoff mode, so they're struggling financially and laying people off. So what we're seeing on the RMC side is we see a ton of on hold files still pent up from the pandemic. And then additional to this sort of difficult job market, we're seeing just reduced volume overall in 2023. So every RMC leader I've talked to, we're in about the same boat, somewhere between 15 and 20% down from a volume perspective. And this really all started in October of around 2022 and it's trended up through May of 2022. The good news is that in June and July, we're really seeing a nice uptick in volume and it's providing us a pretty nice hope for the rest of the year. So some of that economic pressure that you're seeing, the good jobs report, things like that, we're starting to see a release of some of that, some of the challenges we've had in the last 6 months.
Got it. One thing you mentioned with the sale of homes, you're seeing a couple of stories of people being offered a new job, and just because of their interest rates, they don't want to move, or they come back like, "Yeah, I need to be remote." I guess what are your current thoughts, and what's the state of remote work as we're talking in this early portion of July? Obviously, pandemic upended things. As we move further away from the pandemic, remote work is here to stay, but I feel that there have been more and more stories and articles, however you want to classify it, of employers kind of taking it back. How are you finding, like, your clients, people you're talking with, are navigating this situation where it's still something that the employees want? A lot of people see the benefits of it, but employers are kind of, the pendulum may be swinging back to them.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. The reality is I don't think any of us know. It's hard. It's really hard to judge um, kind of the war for talent, and it really I think it depends on which lens you're really looking through, right? So I think if you're an employer, I think you might think talent's really won in some way, right? So remote work, there are people's now unwillingness to maybe work after normal business hours, people focusing on work-life balance and mental health probably more than loyalty to the company in the past. Uh, so, I think a lot of people seem to be feeling like, oh, remote work's out of the bag. But we're starting to see some other things happening, right? So in Silicon Valley, for instance, we're seeing some clawback some of the benefits that used to be really good. So uh, in the past, competition for talent was so strong that the workers had just massive amount of power employees. So they were getting, huge hiring packages and stock options and unlimited vacations and wellness retreats and, uh, masseuses on site and, workouts and, baristas and all the food, unlimited food and a lot of these companies now they're getting rid of those benefits, right? They're saying, hey, these aren't things we're really going to offer our employees as much anymore. Um, and it feels like, on one hand, so many people are going to be able to continue to work remote forever. And then on another hand, that's going to probably come with the cost of reduced benefits, I would say overall. So, and then the final thing I'd say about it is, the last maybe threat to all of it is AI. Right? So I think a lot of people are fearful of job elimination and their AI is going to replace their job in the future, and those their current function is just going to be deemed redundant at the end of the day. So it's just been an interesting time in that space.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue to next points of discussion that we wanted to pick your brains on today, Josh, and that is technology and its impact on the mobility space. And so just like, how have recent tech trends impacted mobility and relocation? You mentioned AI. A lot of us are familiar with, last couple months, Chat GPT. I guess holistically speaking, before we dive a little bit deeper, yeah, can you tell us how tech has impacted mobility and relo?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell a little story. First of all, I love tech, right? So I'm a huge, I'm here on the West Coast. I've been working with, unicorn companies and emerging technologies for my entire career, and so I'm really into kind of understanding the tech scene. And so, AI, Chat GPT, is really interesting. So here's a little story. So, I'm the president of BAM, which is one of the larger industry groups. For those who don't know, it's out in the Bay Area, so we service kind of Silicon Valley. And uh, we had a big annual conference in February of this year. So that is what, 5 months ago, 4 months ago. And at that conference, I usually give a little introductory speech as I kick off the conference. We have about 500 people there, so it's a nice group of people. And so I started giving my speech, and it was a pretty bad speech. I'll just tell you, it wasn't a great speech. The reason it wasn't great is because I had Chat GPT write my speech for me, and I did it on purpose. And I read it verbatim for what Chat GPT did. And most of the audience was like, yeah, okay, that was okay. But what I did is at the end of the speech, I admitted that I had Chat GPT write the speech. I said, hey guys, I got to tell you something. I didn't write this speech. Chat GPT did. And I would say 90% of the audience had no idea what I was talking. They looked at me strangely. Some people who got it were laughing and got a good chuckle out of it, but most people had very little idea what I was doing. Let me fast forward then to a few months later in May. In May, we had another meeting for BAM, and we did it specifically on AI. And then I surveyed that room. We had about close to 200 people at that meeting, and I said, "How many people have now, heard my speech at BAM?" And yeah, okay, great. And then how many people know what ChatGPT is now? The entire room raised their hand. So in just a small 4 or 5 month period, you can see the profound impact that something like, AI and ChatGPT have had on the industry already, and the way people are already starting to think about. We spent the entire day thinking about how could this impact our industry. And so lots of ideas I can share around that.
Do you have any, either general uses of, how your industry peers are utilizing Chat GPT and AI?
So I'll just say I think it's still in its infancy, right? So I don't know that anybody's really figured it out yet. I think
Mhm.
we're all sort of starting to ideate on how to use it and what may be possible. I think some people are using it in a very limited capacity, maybe so far. But I mean, discussions that I've been around, there's some really obvious areas. So one, probably the most obvious area is trying to remove some of the work from the relocation consultants that are redundant, or from anyone, if you're in household goods or temp housing or any other sort of vertical in our industry, that, there's that redundant work that can be automated probably through ChatGPT, and it also creates an ability to have more availability. So if you want to have 24/7 support, or some sort of instant uh, answers to your questions, you might be able to have a good quick interaction with a chatbot. Where's my expense report, or what do I need to know for the household goods movers that are coming tomorrow, or I need some help with some destination information on this new country I'm going to. So tell me about Tokyo, and how do I get around on a train in Tokyo? Things like an AI chatbot, I think, can probably solve a lot of those things where you might have had a relocation consultant that had to do that before. So that's the most obvious.
So on the topic of tech, and you mentioned you're in Silicon Valley, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this the ongoing. I don't want to call it a battle. I feel like that's a kind of not the right way to classify it, but it seems to be that a lot of the tech titans are moving toward AR/VR. However, augmented reality or virtual reality. Uh, you know, Meta/Facebook has their own headset. Apple has just unveiled their headset. How do you see the headsets or just this tech that puts the user in maybe a different space um, being utilized and being thought about in the mobility space? I guess, simplest way to think about it from my end is I put on a headset and I'm being able to have like a almost real like interaction with someone who is in Shanghai.
Yep.
Uh, how do you see this type of tech factoring into the larger mobility space where maybe someone uses this headset versus doing like a short term assignment in a different country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know yet. This stuff is so new right now. AR, VR, the metaverse, the Apple headset. Um, but I think you're right. I mean, I think you could predict a future where maybe there's less international assignments, right? Because someone's saying, "Hey, I feel like I can connect with my team in Shanghai, like you said, and I can have a business meeting. I can feel like I'm interacting with them on a personal level, and I never have to leave the comfort of my own house or apartment, right? So I definitely see that angle of it where maybe there's less people moving on the sort of what relocation related companies might do. We're already seeing some of it. I think some of the temp housing companies have already used VR to start previewing their properties, right? So, hey, I need to find a new place to live in New York. I want to look at 10 places today. Hey, slap on your VR headset and you can just pretend like you're walking around, 6 or 7 different New York apartments and go, oh, I really like, apartment number 3. That's the one. That's the one I want to be at. It fits my couch and my TV and my bed just right and looks out on a great view of the city. That's the one I want to do. So we're already seeing that one happening. And then imagine some other good uses for it. I mean, like you said, let's say you are going to go to Shanghai and, you decided, okay, I can't make this virtually work, but I got to go to Shanghai and be on assignment for a couple of years. Maybe you want to take a city preview or a tour. Normally you'd fly out to Shanghai. You'd have to, walk around the city and see which neighborhoods you like. But maybe now you can do that all virtually. Like you could virtually walk around the city and say, oh, this looks like it's got the restaurants I want. There's the gym I want. And, that's close to it, the hospital. And so I feel safe from a medical perspective. Right. So I think that all could really happen. And then, I think for our relocation consultants or anyone who's providing service to relocating employees, I mean, feeling like you're in the room with somebody and be able to answer their questions on a more human level, I think virtual reality can definitely solve for that in the future. Where Zoom's sort of one thing, right? We're on a video chat right now, but I don't think that's the same as being in virtual reality with somebody where you're literally like, there's like a presence, right? So I think that'll help from an emotional aspect and from a human aspect, being able to just connect better with people and deal with those real human issues in a very technological way.
Hey, Josh, one final question for you, loosely related to the AR VR discussion, right? The ability for tech to fill the gap that has maybe been left by a decrease in global travel, which we've seen since COVID. I mean, there's been a slight uptick back, but we're not back at 2018 levels yet, right?
Sure.
Pre-pandemic levels quite yet. You were just in Japan, right? Japan is not widely known for having a robust immigration system where lots of new people are coming in to fill those demographic gaps. Yet they seem to be all right. They seem to be doing all right as an economy. Meanwhile, you have countries like Canada that are welcoming pretty much as many immigrants as they possibly can, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To fill some of those demographic gaps that they know are coming, right? Germany, similar, but is going to face many issues. Uh, Going, the way I see it, seems like there's going to be pockets of globalization regionally. Maybe the U.S. and Canada will continue to be spots where folks from other countries come to permanently. But then there'll be other regions that kind of fade into the dust that maybe were more popular for relocation in previous decades. What are your thoughts on that landscape? Maybe looking at 2033. What do you think will be the hotbeds for relocation internationally in the world?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the ones have been popular for a while. I think you just see. I think wherever you have sort of mass population, it's hard not to think those are going to continue to be important, right? I mean, you could take United States as a microcosm of it, right? For years, people have been moving to the coasts, right? Because there's more, centralized labor market, centralized where there's jobs at. And same thing when you think of the world, right? So as you see company, India and China and UAE and Canada, and the countries that just have those bigger economies, I don't see how that pressure doesn't continue to make those economies bigger and bigger, and places that are not growing at that rate, maybe take a Spain or a Sweden or somebody like that, they're just not growing their populations, and so they're just going to get squeezed more and more, I think. Then, so it's really hard to imagine a world where the things that are on the uptick now don't continue on the uptick, is what I would say.
For sure.
What do you think? What do you think? Because it's hard. It's hard to guess. So
Yeah, I mean, it's you're throwing darts at the wall and just completely guessing. But I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like Western Europe is demographically in trouble, and they're not filling those gaps with immigration. The U.S. is at a significant risk of following that. I mean, we luckily have some built-in safeguards where it doesn't really matter how bad policymakers are in the U.S. The economy seems to keep on rolling no matter what. But I think a country like Canada is thinking far ahead for their future by trying to bring in top talent from around the
Top
world
talent.
in a
Yeah.
variety of industries and sectors, and they're also helping them actually relocate to the provinces that need higher population, which is something the U.S. doesn't do. We don't have a place based visa program that incentivizes relocation to some of the burgeoning or to some of the areas that are having a difficult time maintaining population.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you look at sort of the world economies, right? And you sort of if you put them on a chart or something, it's like if you take the top like six or seven economies in the world, it basically encompasses the rest of the world. Like everybody else in the rest of the world doesn't even match up to the top five or six. So I don't know. I don't know how you bridge that gap. I think it just keeps, someone's going to move up a little bit here and there, but it just feels like that's just going to keep getting wider and wider to me.
Well, Josh, we've had an awesome time chatting with you today. Finn and I, as always, like to give our guests, the last couple of minutes, put the spotlight on you, as well as the organizations that you're a part of. So, obviously, you're with Odyssey Relocation, and as you mentioned, you are the president of BAM, the Bay Area Mobility Management. So, can you just tell us a little bit more about Odyssey? The work that you guys do, and then same thing for BAM.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Odyssey a little bit. We are a relocation management company. We're headquartered in California. We're definitely a mid-sized relocation company, so have all the global capabilities of really any RMC out there, but a much more premium product, probably is what I would say. We have a really unique approach to the way we run our business. One of the things we do is we really hire the most experienced people we can, and so I think one thing people may not know about most relocation management companies is most relocation consultants are hourly employees, and so they've got sort of limited time that they can be available for employees. We are salaried relocation consultants that are typically highly tenured, and so that's kind of we think of that as the way we kind of approach mobility a little bit differently. On the other side for BAM, I am the president of BAM for a couple more months. I'm on the kind of last end of my two year reign, I guess, for lack of a better word. Uh, it's a great organization if you haven't had a chance to be a part of it. We have typically a really large corporate attendance. So oftentimes for annual conference, upwards of 200 corporates that will show up for an event. I think that's about as good as it does regionally across America. And so if you haven't got a chance to come out to one of our events, they're really fun and just great content, great networking, great chance to be with our community. And that's what we really focus on. We use the word very community very strategically at BAM because that's what we really view everybody in our space as is this kind of intertwined community that need to be all work together.
Are you term limited?
I Yes, I mean, we don't. I guess I should say we're redoing our bylaws right now. So yes, there are no terms in the bylaws today, but yes, I have a successor already, and they'll be taking over at the end of the year.
Yeah, gotcha,
Shout
gotcha.
out to
Nice.
shout out to Jordan. Shout out to Jordan Blue from Aaron.
There you go. There you go. Speaking of events, whether from Odyssey or BAM, anything you want to plug or highlight that's upcoming?
Yeah, sure. I'll just talk about a couple quick things. We're going to be for BAM. August 23rd is our summer soiree. That's typically for our corporates and our sponsors only. So that's kind of a smaller event, but a really nice, intimate, fun event. And that's going to be at a bocce ball place in outside of San Jose. That's really fun. And then our actual fall meeting that's focused on more education is October 5th. And then I'll just put out a general plug. C will be hosting an event in the Bay Area right before ERC. Maybe for those West Coast people who can't travel out to ERC this year, we're going to be putting on a local event that's going to have some really nice education for folks. So more details to follow.
Awesome. Provide us those links to where people can find out more. We'll put them in the description and show notes, and so people can check them out. And then finally, if where can people find you, interact with you, ask you questions, and just chat a little bit more?
Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn. Easy. Just look up Josh Hyatt. You'll find me. It's not hard. And you can also go to our Odyssey website, www.odysseyreload.com. There's info and chat there. Connect on. You can also find my email and contact information there.
Awesome. Well, Josh, it's been a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon, or late morning, as you're out on the West Coast. Thank you so much for hopping on. We'll have to have you back on for in the next few months, see where things are, chat more about tech and festivals. We'll need that summer festival recap from you
Yeah,
next time you're on.
I mean, does a VR festival work quite as well? I don't know. It's not the same, right? You gotta be there in the crowd with everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure it's coming though. I feel like it's definitely, once all these headsets are out there, that's going to be a thing.
That's right. I think you're probably
So,
right. Well, thanks,
yeah.
Eric. Thanks, Finn. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks.